I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. I say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me. But what I do say is that at a certain point, ultimately talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action.
And I'm almost speechless there myself. I mean, what do you think of that? Has he been fooled?
No, I think the key point here, Danny, is that Trump fooled himself, right? Putin didn't fool him. Putin has been a straight shooter on this issue from the get-go, especially with regard to Trump. You don't have to like Putin's position, his bargaining position, but it's been perfectly clear from the beginning. What Trump did was fool himself into thinking that he could get Putin to change his terms of a settlement. And he has these various conversations with Putin that he says are nice and pleasant conversations. But who cares whether he has nice or pleasant conversations with Putin? The key issue here is what does he think of Putin's terms, and is he going to accept them or not? And this is what I assume they talk about to some extent in their conversations. I would imagine that Putin has told him what the bottom line is from a Russian perspective. But Trump doesn't seem to understand this. And this is why this charade has gone on for months and months. And we are where we are at today. Trump fooled himself.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be borne out in the next soundbite we have from that same conversation, because as I play this, refer back to the phone call, the last one that took place between the two. I think there's been 5 or 6 even since he took office. So there's been plenty of opportunity here directly from Putin on what he thinks. But on July 3rd, for sure, Trump is reported, according to the readouts on both sides, to have asked Russia again for an unconditional ceasefire. And according to the, actually, again, both sides, the Russians in particular were very detailed in their readout, is that Putin said, we're not going to stop ceasefire. We're until we get the core issues solved. Only then are we going to stop, and we are not going to budge on these. So he, again, to your point, totally told him straight up front what he did, but apparently he did it very politely. But he said, we're not going to budge on this. And then in light of that, you have Trump then saying that he thought we were going to have this solved 4 times.
I felt that we had a deal about 4 times. And I thought we should have had a deal done a long time ago. But it just keeps going on and on and on. And every night people are dying. A lot of people, a lot of Russian soldiers are dying, by the way.
I got to just ask, upon what basis could he possibly think he had a deal when Putin has, as you said, never changed his terms?
Yeah, and again, he never says what that deal was. Okay, they nearly had a deal 4 times. Please tell me what the deal was that he thought that he had. And of course, he doesn't tell you because he is blowing smoke when he said they almost had a deal 4 times. And with regard to this issue of the ceasefire, the Russians have said ad nauseum that they will not accept a ceasefire. Nevertheless, Trump and his lieutenants and the Europeans and the Ukrainians continue to push for a ceasefire. The Russians say that is categorically unacceptable. Don't these people, like President Trump, understand that that's just wasting one's time to keep calling for a ceasefire? Furthermore, common sense should tell these people that the Russians would be fools to accept the ceasefire. If you're winning on the battlefield and the other side is losing, why would you agree to a ceasefire to give them, in effect, a timeout so they can reconstitute their forces, rearm, and put up a better fight against you. If you have the other side on the run, the name of the game is to keep pushing. And this, of course, is exactly what the Russians are doing. And to go back to my previous point, it's what the Russians have said they're going to do, period, end of story. But nevertheless, we continue to push for a ceasefire. And this is probably what President Trump means when he said they almost had a deal 4 times. He probably convinced himself the Russians were going to accept his proposal for a ceasefire, when in fact they were never going to accept that.
And so what do you think that the Russians are going to do with this information now? They have been given this, what Ria Novosti called an ultimatum of 50 days, or there's going to be sanctions. I would think, and tell me if you agree or disagree or expand on it, that the Kremlin's probably going today like, that's it. That's all you're going to see, 50 days, and it's going to be where it is right now, because I don't think there's any difference. So how do you see the Kremlin reacting to this?
I think they're just going to continue to do what they're doing. They're just going to continue to push forward and win on the battlefield. I mean, I think the Russians clearly understand there's really no possibility for a negotiated settlement at this point in time, unless Trump does a 180-degree turn, and there's no evidence that's going to happen. So I think if you're the Russians, you just continue to soldier on and try to wrap this up as quickly as possible. And of course, at the same time, if you're smart, you talk in a diplomatic way toward both the Americans, the Europeans, and the world community. You want to make it look like you are reasonable. And I'm talking about the Russians here. They don't want to fly off the handle and use hot rhetoric. They want to use diplomatic rhetoric, make it look like the United States and the Europeans and the Ukrainians are the unreasonable actors in this situation, not them. So I don't expect to see much change in Russian behavior.
Well, yeah, there is one person that was really excited about today's announcement, and that was Volodymyr Zelensky. Gary, if you could roll that one from earlier today.
Thank you, General, for participation first time. We had very good conversation with General just now, and thank you, General, for coming. And thanks. We have often meetings with you and your team. Thanks to your team also for coming to Kiev. Thank you so much. We are thankful to President Trump for his all messages and very strong decisions about resuming delivers for us, and we are thankful for bipartisan support. And of course, we had very good conversations in Hague, and we had with President, and we had very good phone conversation. We made some decisions very positive for both countries, and just now we spoke about air defense with General.
So you mentioned a second ago, John, that the Russians understand about the power dynamics here. They know that the West doesn't have enough ammunition to make a difference. They know that the Ukraine side doesn't have enough personnel to use them, even if magically they could come up with the ammunition and weapons at the scale that is needed. But what about Zelensky? Because he seemed very, very happy and content that he got these, but he has to know those exact same power fundamentals as well. So the question is he just detached from reality and like Hitler in the bunker in the last days of the Third Reich, or does he have some other play? How do you see that?
Well, I think anytime a leader gets into a war and the war goes south, it's rare that leader cuts his or her losses and exits the war. I think what happens in most cases is that you hang on hoping for a miracle. I think if you look at the American experience in Afghanistan, we were there for 20 years, and it was very clear after less than 10 years that was a hopeless situation. But we just hung on. And President Trump, who was the one who decided to get out, ran into a lot of opposition when he did. And President Biden, who actually did get out, ran into a lot of opposition when he left. And I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War. I think had Congress not put its foot down, we'd still be there fighting that war. it is very difficult when you have all these sunk costs to just abandon the enterprise, and that's what you're seeing here. I mean, if you think about the price the Ukrainians have paid so far in this war, it's really mind-boggling. I believe that they have lost over 1 million men, and this is battle deaths and badly wounded. And all that's going to happen now is they're going to lose more people, and they're going to lose more territory, as you and I have talked about on numerous occasions. It behooves the Ukrainians to cut a deal here. But the leadership just doesn't think in those terms. They want to hang on. They're hoping for a miracle. And now that, the Americans are getting re-involved, or Donald Trump is acting like Joe Biden II, they're beginning to think that maybe they will get that miracle. But as you and I know, they're not going to get the miracle.
Yeah, and I'd like your view on that, since you broached that subject, because during this press conference here today, or this question and answer period, Trump did mention that again, and he said, "Hey, this is Biden's war. It would have never happened if I'd have been in office, and now I've got to deal with it or so." But with this action here, I mean, can he make that claim anymore? Because it seems to me like it would have already been the case, but now it's like, you own it now. You can't be blaming any more on Biden on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe he could make the argument that it wasn't his war yesterday or last week. I think once he walked into the White House and made it clear that he wasn't going to shut down the Biden pipeline, it was his war. But certainly now it's his war. I don't think that Trump understands here, or in the case of Iran, that once you jump into one of these wars, it becomes your war, and it's exceedingly difficult to get out. I mean, Biden, to his credit, went to enormous lengths not to get into a war in Iran. The Israelis tried to bait us into a war against Iran in 2024 on 2 separate occasions, and the Biden administration smartly did not take the bite, or take the bait, rather. What's happened here with Trump, and this goes back to the 12-day war, is he took the bait, and on June 22nd, he jumped in. So we're now committed to that war against Iran. And I think Trump thought it was a one and done. I think he just thought he'd go in there, we'd pound the Iranians on June 22nd, and that would be the end of the story. But I don't think that's the way that one's going to end. And I think the same thing is true here. He's jumped in with both feet now. You could argue he was only in with one foot as of yesterday, but he's in with both feet now. And if anything, right, there's no end in sight here. Does he really believe that this one's going to end in 50 days? In 50 days, he's going to give Putin an ultimatum. Putin is going to throw up his hands. He's going to surrender. We're going to have a deal. It's going to be a deal that's favorable to the United States, and we live happily ever after. You really think that's going to happen? I don't think that's going to happen. I think this war is going to go on, and I think the Russians are eventually going to win it. And when they win it, we're going to be in a poisonous political environment afterwards. We're going to have a frozen conflict where both sides loathe each other, where both sides go to great lengths to undermine each other's position, the Russians undermining our position in the West, and we trying to undermine his position inside those territories he's conquered in Ukraine. And then there are all sorts of other potential flashpoints in Eastern Europe that are superimposed on this conflict. Endless trouble is ahead for us, endless trouble. This one is not going to end, and it's a pipe dream for Trump to think that in 50 days he's going to have a magical solution.